One of the most controversial parts of the Dawnwalker game announcement event wasn't actually just the 10 seconds of gameplay footage, but it was all about time. Specifically, it was about the 30-day and 30-night cycle that would act as a sort of framing device around your decisions, as your main objective was tied to that timer. Saving your family, you know, because that tends to be an important thing to do, especially from vampires. Now, I actually found it interesting. I found it like an interesting device, but I also understood why it was controversial, because players, well, they don't like to be rushed, especially in a game that is billing itself as open world. They don't want it to be overly punishing. And that's why I think some people may feel a little bit better after we got a little bit of additional information, some new details on how this mechanic is going to work in the game. Shinobi602, an excellent source of collating game information on Twitter and Blue Sky in short form, shared some information direct from the senior PR and influencer manager over at Rebel Wolves and their game social media itself, as well as an interview from PC Gamer which elaborated a little bit more. But the first and most important bit of information: the game does not have a hard time limit and will not require you to rush. This might sound contradictory given that there is a timer going, but the timer was specifically mentioned that it is to save your family. Confirmation that the game itself does not have a hard limit opens up some interesting possibilities. Possibilities like the potential of, well, failing that main objective and what might happen afterwards. We also learned that not everything is going to move time forward. Exploring the world will not tick the timer forward, but every quest will. Yes, even side quests. But they also stress that this will be abundantly clear to players with how much each quest will move it forward, so you can make some decisions on whether you want to take that quest or not. A lot of this was all expanded on even further in an interview with PC Gamer with the Blood of Dawnwalker's design director. Essentially, they're treating time as a resource, saying, quote, "The time system is a core element of our narrative sandbox. It moves only when you do the content, such as a quest or a task, because we do not want the time system to be there to rush the player or stress them out. We want the time system to be a part of the narrative experience, and part of the whole both action and inaction have consequences approach." I think what will immediately stand out here to anyone concerned about this mechanic in game is that they don't want the player to feel rushed, something I mentioned at the outset. They don't want you stressed. I mean, I guess no more stressed than you would be normally in a world filled with vampires and people losing their legs and murder and blood and lots of things that go bump in the night. Well, I guess, and also, you know, your family being taken. But what I really hung on to this though was the last part about action and inaction. Could you be presented with a difficult choice? Sacrifice some of your time for the greater good, or to sacrifice some of that to preserve the time you need to save your family. It's touched on a little bit in this next quote from the same interview. Quote, "It will work in interesting ways. It will definitely force you to make choices at some points, like what to do and what to ignore, because you will also have to choose which content you want to do and which content you want to ignore in order to maximize your chances of defeating the main enemy. But you will be able to choose between different ways to approach the problem, and that all ties into the narrative sandbox again." They go further to explain this as kind of a sort of way to avoid the immersion breaking of, well, playing Gwent instead of saving Ciri, which not exactly, you know, little on the nose given that they're coming from CD Projekt Red and many of them worked on Witcher 3. So I guess also just to add to that, like collecting wheels of cheese in Skyrim instead of dealing with the fucking dragons, because the dragons will still be there. The cheese may rot or get bad. What happens to cheese? Is it gets moldy? That's the word I was looking for. Moldy. I can see this working well if it's handled delicately. The reaction to the time mechanic is in large part because it can feel frustrating. It can feel forced. and it can add stress to an RPG where you feel railroaded into certain decisions. It can make that sense of freedom feel far less. But conversely, it can add more weight to your decision making, and it may appeal more to an RPG player who's looking for an immersive narrative RPG experience rather than a build your own side quest driven romp through an open world. Both of which are of course completely entertaining and valid RPG formats, but it's good that a game knows what it wants to be, and hopefully sticks to what it wants to be. But what do you think? Did this make you feel better about the time mechanic in the game that was revealed at the event? Did it make you more concerned? I think having more information in general is a good thing as we get our heads around exactly what this game is going to be. But if you're still confused and you still don't know what the hell Blood of the Dawnwalker is, well, I covered that in this video right here, where you get to see a little bit of some of the big takeaways that we got from the event, and see a lot of bloody dismemberments. It's very gory, very visceral, vampire-infested RPG from some pretty great RPG veterans.